Welcome to the Chubby Storytelling. Before we dive into today's story, please take a second to like and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your support. Now, let's get started. I never imagined my life would take the turn it did. I'm Emily Brooks, a 36-year-old nurse from Chicago. For the past decade, my life had been comfortable. I had my routines, my responsibilities, and my husband, Michael. But then, Daniel Hayes walked into my world and everything changed. It started innocently enough. I'd seen Daniel around the hospital before. He's a pharmacist 9 years younger than me, and someone you couldn't help but notice. He had this calmness about him, like no matter how chaotic things got, he'd never lose his composure. It was magnetic, really. One evening after a long shift, I was in the break room sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee. The day had been brutal, and I was grateful for a moment of silence. That's when Daniel walked in, balancing a tray of paperwork and a mug of tea. He smiled at me, and it wasn't the polite smile we all gave each other in passing. It was warm and genuine. "Long day?" he asked, setting his tray down. "Always," I replied with a tired laugh. We chatted briefly. Nothing extraordinary, just small talk about work and how the hospital never seemed to slow down. But there was something in the way he listened, the way his presence seemed to put me at ease. Later that same evening, as I was heading to my car, I saw him standing outside scrolling through his phone. The rain had started to fall, and before I could think twice, I rolled down my window and called out, "Need a ride?" He looked surprised but grateful. "Are you sure? I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," I said, unlocking the door. "Hop in before you get soaked." That first drive home was unremarkable in the grand scheme of things, but I remember every detail. The scent of his cologne, a mix of cedarwood and citrus, the way his laughter filled the car, warm and a little guarded. By the time I dropped him off at his apartment, I felt lighter, like the weight of the day had lifted. I didn't think much of it at the time. It was just a ride, right? But then it happened again and again. Our conversations grew longer, deeper. He told me about his childhood in Seattle, how he'd originally planned to become an engineer like his father, but chose pharmacy because he wanted to help people. I told him about my dream of becoming a doctor, a dream I'd set aside when life got in the way. "You still can," he said one evening, his voice full of quiet encouragement. Caught me off guard. No one had ever said that to me before, not even Michael. "Michael, I should tell you about him. He's a good man, reliable, hard-working." But somewhere along the way, we stopped being partners and became roommates. Our conversations were reduced to schedules and bills. The spark we once had, it was gone. I didn't mean for things with Daniel to go further. I didn't plan for the stolen glances, the lingering touches, the way my heart raced whenever I saw him, but it happened and it shook me. One night after I'd driven him home again, Daniel turned to me and asked, "Why are you doing this? Giving me rides, spending time with me?" I froze. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my mind scrambling for an answer. "Because I enjoy your company," I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, his gaze steady and searching. "I enjoy your company too, more than I probably should." That was the moment everything shifted. The unspoken connection we'd been dancing around became impossible to ignore. I wish I could say I stopped it there, that I walked away and returned to my life as it was, but I didn't. Every day I found myself drawn to him, to the way he made me feel seen, alive. I know what you're thinking. How could I let it happen? How could I risk everything for someone I barely knew? Trust me, I've asked myself those same questions 1,000 times. But here's the thing. When you've been living on autopilot for so long, the first spark of something real feels impossible to resist. It's like waking up after years of sleepwalking. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I have the courage to take the risks Daniel talked about or if I'll retreat back into the safety of my old life. All I know is that he's made me question everything, my choices, my happiness, and what I truly want. And maybe that's the scariest part of all. The days following Daniel's confession were a whirlwind of emotions for me. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, teetering between the life I knew and the life I was beginning to imagine. Every moment at work felt charged. Every accidental touch, every shared glance. The boundaries I had so carefully built were blurring, and I was powerless to stop it. One afternoon, as I was finishing my shift, I saw Daniel standing by the pharmacy counter. He was talking to a patient, his calm voice carrying over the usual hospital chaos. He caught my eye and gave me a small knowing smile. My heart skipped a beat and I quickly looked away, pretending to be engrossed in my clipboard. Later, as I was leaving, I found him waiting by the entrance. The rain had started again, light but persistent. "Need a ride?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He hesitated as if weighing the implications, then nodded. "If you don't mind." The drive was quiet at first, the sound of the rain filling the silence between us. I focused on the road, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Emily," Daniel said suddenly, his voice soft but firm. I glanced at him. "Yeah, this can't go on like this," he said. "We need to talk about whatever this is." My heart sank. I knew he was right, but hearing him say it out loud made it real. "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We pulled up to his apartment, but neither of us moved to get out of the car. The rain streaked down the windows, blurring the world outside. "I don't want to make things harder for you," Daniel said, "but I can't ignore how I feel." I turned to him, my chest tightening. "And how do you feel?" Looked at me, his dark eyes full of emotion. "I think about you all the time. I don't know where this is going, but I know I don't want to stop seeing you." His honesty was both terrifying and exhilarating. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind pulling me in every direction. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice breaking. Daniel reached out his hand, brushing mine. "We'll figure it out together." I nodded, though even my mind was screaming at me to stop. But my heart was already falling. Our connection deepened in ways I couldn't have imagined. We found reasons to cross paths at work, moments stolen in the break room or quiet corners of the hospital. The guilt was always there, a constant weight I carried with me, but I couldn't seem to let go. At home, Michael began to notice the distance. He asked if everything was okay, and I lied, telling him I was just tired from work. But the truth was, I didn't know how to face him. I didn't know how to tell him that I wasn't the same person I had been when we first met. One evening, Daniel and I went for a walk after work. The rain had faded, leaving the air crisp and fresh. We talked about everything and nothing. His books, my childhood dreams, the way the city lights reflected on the wet pavement. As we reached the end of the street, Daniel stopped and turned to me. "I need to know something," he said. "What?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Do you see a future for us, or is this just a moment?" The question hit me like a freight train. I had been so caught up in the whirlwind of emotions that I hadn't allowed myself to think about the consequences. "I don't know," I admitted, tears welling up in my eyes. "I've built a life with Michael. I don't know how to walk away from that." Daniel nodded, his expression pained, but understanding. "I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. I just need to know if there's hope." I looked at him, my heart aching. "I don't know if I can give you the answer you want, but I can't imagine my life without you in it." We stood there in the quiet of the night, the weight of our situation pressing down on us. A week later, everything came to a head. Michael found a text from Daniel on my phone, a simple one. "Thank you for today." It didn't mean much on the surface, but it was enough to raise suspicion. "Who's Daniel?" he asked, his voice calm, but sharp. I froze, my mind racing. "He's a pharmacist at work. We've been working on a project together." Michael studied me, his eyes filled with doubt. "Is there something you're not telling me, Emily?" I couldn't lie anymore. The guilt, the secret, it was all too much. "I don't know how to explain this," I said, tears streaming down my face. "But I've been unhappy for a long time. And Daniel, he made me feel alive again." Michael didn't say anything for a long time. The silence was deafening. "I think we need some time apart," he finally said, his voice heavy with pain. And just like that, my carefully constructed life began to crumble. I moved into a small flat not far from the hospital in Chicago. Daniel and I continued to see each other, but it wasn't the same. The weight of what I had lost hung between us, a constant reminder of the price I had paid. Some days I wondered if I had made the right choice, but other days when I was with Daniel, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The weeks after I moved out were some of the hardest I've ever endured. My life felt fragmented, split between the pain of leaving my marriage and the uncertainty of what lay ahead with Daniel. I often questioned my decisions, wondering if I had acted selfishly, if I had thrown away a decade of my life for something fleeting. Michael and I decided to file for separation. We kept things civil, but every conversation felt like a knife twisting in my chest. He had been my rock for so long, and now I had become the storm that shattered us. Work became my sanctuary. Daniel and I tried to keep things professional, but our connection was undeniable. We'd sneak moments between shifts, sharing whispered conversations in quiet corners of the hospital. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Daniel suggested we grab dinner at a small cafe nearby. It was the first time we'd gone out together outside of our car rides or hospital corridors. Over steaming bowls of soup and the faint hum of soft jazz playing in the background, we talked about our pasts, our dreams, the guilt we both carried. "I'm not proud of how we started," Daniel admitted, his eyes fixed on his hands. "But I don't regret meeting you, Emily. You've changed my life." His honesty took my breath away. For all the chaos we'd caused, there was something deeply genuine about what we shared. "I don't regret meeting you either," I said, reaching for his hand across the table. As the months passed, I began to piece my life back together. Michael and I finalized our separation. And though it was painful, it felt like the right step for both of us. He deserved someone who could give him their whole heart, and I knew I wasn't that person anymore. Daniel and I decided to take things slowly to build our relationship on a foundation of honesty this time. We started spending more time together outside of work, long walks through the park, quiet evenings cooking dinner at my flat in Chicago, and endless conversations about the future. But the guilt never fully disappeared. I knew I had hurt people in the process of finding my own happiness, and that wasn't something I could easily forgive myself for. One day, I decided to talk to Michael. I owed him closure and I needed it for myself too. We met at a cafe, the same one where we used to have breakfast on lazy Sunday mornings. The familiarity of the place made the conversation even harder. "I'm sorry for everything, Michael," I said, tears streaming down my face. "You didn't deserve this," he sobbed, his expression a mix of sadness and acceptance. "I won't lie, Emily. It hurt, but maybe we both needed to face some truths about our marriage. I hope you find what you're looking for." His words were a gift, a small piece of forgiveness that allowed me to finally start moving forward. Over time, Daniel and I found a rhythm that worked for us. It wasn't always easy. We faced judgment from colleagues and friends, and there were moments when the weight of our past felt unbearable. But through it all, we leaned on each other, learning how to navigate the complexities of love and redemption. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of my flat watching the sunset over Chicago, Daniel turned to me and said, "I don't know what the future holds, Emily, but I do know I want to face it with you." For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I was finally living my truth. Looking back, I've learned that life is messy and that the decisions we make often come with consequences we can't predict. I hurt people I care about, and I'll always carry that with me. But I've also learned that it's okay to choose yourself, to pursue happiness, even when it feels impossible. To anyone listening to my story, I want to leave you with this. Don't wait until your life feels unbearable to make a change. Take risks, have honest conversations, and don't let fear dictate your choices. And if you ever find yourself standing at a crossroads, Remember this: you can rebuild, you can find hope, and you can create a life that feels true to who you are. Thank you for listening to my story. Now it's your turn. What's holding you back? What's your next step? Don't wait. Take it.